Welcome, dear listener, to a journey through time, a gentle descent into the annals of one of history's most enduring and influential civilizations, the Roman Empire. As the world outside grows quiet and the stars begin to twinkle, we invite you to close your eyes and allow your mind to drift back through the mists of millennia to a time of emperors and legions, of magnificent architecture and profound philosophy. This is not a journey for active study, but rather a serene exploration designed to cradle your mind in the soothing embrace of historical narrative. Imagine the soft murmur of ancient Latin, the rustle of papyrus scrolls, and the distant echoes of a bustling forum. We will traverse the winding paths of Rome's origins, witness its improbable rise from a humble settlement to a vast dominion, and observe its eventual transformation and enduring legacy. As your breath deepens and your body relaxes, envision the verdant hills of Latium, where, according to legend, twin brothers Romulus and Remus laid the foundations of a city destined for greatness. This is where our story begins, in the very heart of the Italian peninsula, a land blessed with fertile soil and a strategic position that would prove pivotal in shaping its destiny. We will explore the early republic, a fascinating period characterized by the delicate balance of power between consuls, senators, and the plebeian masses. Feel the weight of their decisions, the echoes of their debates, as Rome slowly but surely extends its influence, first across Italy, then across the Mediterranean. Consider the meticulous craftsmanship of Roman engineers who designed aqueducts that still stand today, bridges that spanned mighty rivers, and roads that connected an empire. Imagine the sheer scale of their public works, a testament to their ambition and ingenuity. We will walk through the bustling streets of ancient Rome, hear the clang of hammers from busy workshops, and perhaps even catch the scent of freshly baked bread from a local bakery. This is a city that breathed, a living organism of stone and spirit. We will also delve into the daily lives of its inhabitants, from the humble farmer tilling his fields to the noble senator deliberating in the Curia. What did they eat? How did they dress? What were their hopes and fears? These are the threads that weave the rich tapestry of Roman life. As our narrative unfolds, you will encounter the towering figures who shaped Rome's destiny, from the cunning strategists of the Punic Wars to the charismatic leaders of the late Republic, whose ambitions ultimately led to its transformation. Picture the vast legions, disciplined and formidable, marching across distant lands, their eagles glinting in the sun. Consider the intricate legal system they devised, a framework that continues to influence jurisprudence around the world. Rome's contributions to law, governance, and urban planning are profound and continue to resonate in our modern world. Even the very concept of citizenship, with its rights and responsibilities, owes a significant debt to Roman thought. We will then move into the imperial age, a period of unparalleled power and prosperity, yet also one fraught with intrigue and internal strife. Envision the magnificent palaces of the emperors, their vast courts, and the intricate web of power that governed their lives. From the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and stability, to the challenges of succession and the growing pressures on its vast borders, the empire continually adapted, evolved, and, at times, struggled. This is a story of human ambition, resilience, and the relentless march of time. Allow your mind to absorb these images and narratives, not with effort, but with a gentle curiosity. Let the facts and figures settle softly in your awareness, like dust motes dancing in a sunbeam. This is a journey designed to deepen your connection to the past, to understand the roots of our present, and to provide a tranquil passage into the realm of dreams. As we embark on this serene expedition, remember that history is not merely a collection of dates and names, but a vibrant, living story, echoing across the centuries. And now, as the gentle current of time carries us forward, let us begin our exploration of the Roman Empire, from its humble beginnings to its magnificent legacy. Our journey truly begins in the 8th century BCE, on a cluster of 7 hills overlooking the Tiber River, a strategically advantageous location in what is now modern-day Italy. This region, known as Latium, was home to various Italic tribes. Legend, of course, tells us of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers suckled by a she-wolf, who, in a fit of sibling rivalry, saw Romulus establish the city of Rome on the Palatine Hill in 753 BCE. While charming, this myth likely masks a more gradual process of settlement and confederation among the small villages that dotted these hills. Initially, Rome was a monarchy, ruled by a succession of 7 kings. The early Roman community was largely agrarian, centered around family units known as gentes or clans. Life was simple, dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the demands of farming. The earliest inhabitants cultivated cereals, tended livestock, and lived in modest dwellings of wood and thatch. Society was hierarchical, with a small elite, the patricians, holding sway over the common people, the plebeians. While the kings held significant power, there was already a nascent form of public assembly and a council of elders, the Senate, whose influence would grow profoundly over time. The most famous of these kings, if tradition serves, was Tarquin the Proud, a tyrannical ruler whose arrogance and oppressive reign ultimately led to a popular uprising. In 509 BCE, the Romans, fed up with monarchical abuses, expelled Tarquin and established a new form of government, the Republic. This was a pivotal moment, marking a profound shift in Roman political thought and setting the stage for centuries of self-governance. The word republic itself, res publica, translates to public thing or public affair, emphasizing a system where power resided with the citizens rather than a single monarch. Under the Republic, power was primarily vested in 2 annually elected officials, the consuls. These individuals held executive authority, commanded the army, and presided over the Senate. To prevent any one person from becoming too powerful, their terms were short, and they could veto each other's decisions. The Senate, initially an advisory body to the kings, evolved into the most powerful institution in the Republic. Composed of former magistrates, mostly patricians, the Senate held immense prestige and influence, guiding foreign policy, controlling the treasury, and effectively shaping Roman law. However, the early Republic was far from a harmonious utopia. A deep social struggle, known as the conflict of the orders, simmered between the patricians and the plebeians. The patricians, by virtue of their birth, monopolized political office, religious roles, and legal knowledge. The plebeians, despite forming the backbone of the army and the economy, had little political voice and faced economic hardship. They agitated for greater rights, demanding access to political office, protection from arbitrary justice, and relief from debt. One of the most significant achievements of the plebeian struggle was the creation of the 12 Tables around 450 BCE. Before this, Roman law was largely unwritten, interpreted and enforced by patrician magistrates, often to the disadvantage of the plebeians. The 12 Tables were a codification of Roman law, publicly displayed for all to see. This monumental step brought a degree of transparency and fairness to the legal system, ensuring that all citizens, at least in theory, were subject to the same laws. While not a complete victory for equality, it was a crucial step towards a more equitable society and laid the groundwork for the sophisticated Roman legal system that would develop over centuries. Another key development was the creation of the office of the tribune of the plebs. These officials, elected by the plebeians, possessed the power to veto actions by magistrates or the Senate that they deemed harmful to the common people. Their persons were sacrosanct, meaning any harm inflicted upon a tribune was considered a religious offense. This office provided a vital check on patrician power and became a powerful voice for plebeian interests. The ongoing struggle between the orders, though often tense, ultimately forced Rome to develop a more complex and adaptable political system, one that incorporated elements of democracy, aristocracy, and monarchy. As Rome internally grappled with its social structure, it also began to expand its influence outwards. The early Roman army, initially a citizen militia, grew increasingly organized and formidable. Its tactics involved disciplined formations and unwavering commitment. Rome engaged in a series of conflicts with its neighbors in Latium and the surrounding regions. These early wars were often about securing fertile land, access to trade routes, and defending against hostile tribes. The Romans were not merely conquerors. They were also adept at diplomacy, forming alliances and incorporating defeated peoples into their sphere of influence through a system of partial citizenship and treaties. This strategy of assimilation, rather than outright subjugation, proved remarkably effective in consolidating their control over the Italian peninsula. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had effectively gained control over most of Italy. This expansion was not without its challenges. The Samnite Wars, a series of fierce conflicts against the Samnites in central Italy, were particularly brutal and tested Roman resolve. Yet each victory, each challenge overcome, forged a stronger, more confident Rome. The construction of the Appian Way, one of Rome's earliest and most famous roads, around 312 BCE, epitomizes this period of expansion. It was a marvel of engineering, facilitating troop movements and trade, and physically connecting Rome to its growing territories. Imagine the legions marching along this paved surface, the rhythmic clang of their armor echoing through the hills, a testament to Rome's growing power and ambition. The early republic, therefore, was a period of intense growth and transformation. From a small city-state, Rome was slowly but surely building the foundations of an empire. The political institutions of the republic, the consuls, the senate, the assemblies, and the tribunes, were being forged in the crucible of internal conflict and external expansion. The Roman character, characterized by gravitas, dignity and seriousness, pietas, duty to gods, family, and state, and virtus, manliness and courage, was being shaped through these trials. The landscape of Italy, with its rolling hills, fertile plains, and rugged mountains, became the proving ground for Rome's nascent power. As we drift deeper into this historical narrative, consider the subtle shifts in power, the gradual evolution of Roman society, and the enduring resilience of its people. The early Roman soldier, a farmer by trade, would return to his fields after campaigns, a stark contrast to the professional armies that would emerge in later centuries. This citizen-soldier ideal, rooted in duty and civic responsibility, was a defining characteristic of the early republic. The Roman legion, a flexible and adaptable military unit, was a constant force for expansion and defense. Its precise maneuvers and unwavering discipline would become legendary. The challenges of governing an increasingly large territory led to further innovations. The Roman legal system continued to develop, with magistrates known as praetors overseeing justice, and a growing body of civil law governing contracts, property, and personal rights. The concept of ius civile, the law of citizens, was distinct from ius gentium, the law of nations, which applied to non-Romans. This distinction reflected Rome's growing interaction with diverse peoples and cultures. The Romans, while often pragmatic and at times ruthless, were also remarkably adaptable, willing to borrow and integrate elements from other cultures into their own. As we conclude this first chapter, envision the nascent power of Rome, a city still growing into its strength, its future largely unwritten. The seeds of empire had been sown, nurtured by ambition, resilience, and a unique blend of political innovation and military might. The early republic, with its internal struggles and external conquests, was a vital crucible in which the Roman spirit was forged. From the muddy banks of the Tiber to the hillsides echoing with the sounds of marching legions, Rome was becoming something formidable, something truly unprecedented. We leave this period with a sense of anticipation, knowing that the stage is now set for even grander acts in the unfolding drama of Roman history. Close your eyes and allow these images to gently settle within your mind as we prepare to continue our journey. As the 3rd century BCE dawned, Rome found itself not only master of the Italian peninsula, but also on the cusp of an encounter that would define its destiny, a clash with the formidable maritime power of Carthage. Imagine a vast, shimmering sea, the Mediterranean, teeming with trade and ambition. For centuries, Carthage, a wealthy Phoenician city-state located on the coast of modern-day Tunisia, had dominated these waters. Its naval power was unparalleled, its trading network stretched across the known world, and its formidable army, though often reliant on mercenaries, was led by brilliant commanders. The stage was set for a monumental struggle for supremacy, known as the Punic Wars, a series of 3 epic conflicts that would span over a century. The First Punic War, beginning in 264 BCE, was primarily a struggle for control of Sicily, a strategically vital island lying between Italy and North Africa. Carthage, with its superior navy, initially held the advantage. Rome, traditionally a land power, realized it needed a fleet to challenge Carthaginian dominance. With astonishing speed and ingenuity, the Romans built a navy from scratch, famously adapting Carthaginian ship designs and inventing the corvus, a boarding bridge that allowed their legionaries to transform naval battles into land engagements. Picture these Roman ships, adorned with the corvus, grappling onto enemy vessels, and legionaries swarming across, turning the tide of battle. This innovative spirit and sheer determination were hallmarks of Roman military prowess. After more than 2 decades of grueling conflict, marked by massive naval battles and costly land campaigns, Rome emerged victorious in 241 BCE. Carthage was forced to cede Sicily, pay a massive indemnity, and its naval power was severely curtailed. This victory marked Rome's first acquisition of overseas territory and its emergence as a significant naval power. The island of Sicily became Rome's first province, a territory governed directly by Rome rather than as an allied state. This was a new model of administration, a precursor to the vast provincial system that would later govern the empire. However, the peace was merely an interlude before the storm. The Second Punic War, often considered one of the greatest military conflicts in ancient history, erupted in 218 BCE. At its heart was the figure of Hannibal Barca, one of history's most brilliant military strategists. Imagine a man driven by an unyielding hatred of Rome, a vow sworn to his father to forever be Rome's enemy. Hannibal's audacious plan was to invade Italy directly, not by sea, but by marching his army, including war elephants, across the Pyrenees and the Alps. Picture the incredible feat of leading thousands of men and these massive beasts through treacherous mountain passes, enduring bitter cold and fierce resistance from local tribes. Hannibal's invasion sent shockwaves through Rome. He inflicted a series of devastating defeats on the Romans, most famously at the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, where he annihilated a larger Roman army through brilliant tactical encirclement. The sheer scale of Roman casualties at Cannae was staggering, a loss that profoundly impacted Roman society and morale. Despite these crushing blows, Rome's resilience shone through. Instead of surrendering, they adopted a strategy of attrition, avoiding pitched battles with Hannibal, and focusing on cutting off his supplies and harassing his forces. This Fabian strategy, named after the Roman general Quintus Fabius Maximus, slowly but surely wore down Hannibal's strength. While Hannibal remained in Italy, unable to secure decisive support from Rome's Italian allies, the Romans launched a counter-invasion of Carthaginian territory in North Africa, led by the brilliant young general Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. Scipio, who had studied Hannibal's tactics, inflicted a crucial defeat on Carthage at the Battle of Zama in 2002 BCE, forcing Hannibal to return from Italy to defend his homeland. At Zama, Scipio decisively defeated Hannibal, ending the war. Carthage was utterly crushed, stripped of its fleet, forced to pay another enormous indemnity, and forbidden from waging war without Roman permission. This victory solidified Rome's dominance in the Western Mediterranean and established it as the preeminent power in the region. The consequences of the Second Punic War were immense and far-reaching. Rome's territorial control expanded significantly, and its military reputation soared. However, the war also brought profound social and economic changes. Large tracts of Italian farmland were devastated, and many small farmers, having served in the legions for years, returned home to find their lands ruined or taken over by wealthy landowners, creating vast estates called latifundia. This contributed to growing social inequality and the displacement of the rural population, who increasingly migrated to Rome, creating a burgeoning urban proletariat. The influx of slaves captured during the wars also transformed the Roman economy, particularly agriculture, further marginalizing free labor. Despite these internal strains, Rome's gaze now turned eastward. The Third Punic War, from 149 to 146 BCE, was largely an act of Roman aggression, driven by a desire to utterly eliminate Carthage, which, despite its diminished state, was slowly recovering economically. The Roman senator Cato the Elder famously ended every speech with the refrain, "Cartho delenda est," Carthage must be destroyed. In 46 BCE, after a brutal siege, Carthage was razed to the ground, its population enslaved, and its land allegedly sown with salt, though this last detail is likely a later embellishment. The destruction of Carthage served as a stark warning to any potential rivals and cemented Rome's unchallenged supremacy in the Mediterranean. The same year, 146 BCE also saw Rome conquer Greece, absorbing the remnants of the Hellenistic kingdoms into its ever-expanding empire. While militarily subjugated, Greece would profoundly influence Roman culture. The Romans, though conquerors, greatly admired Greek art, philosophy, literature, and architecture. This led to a fascinating cultural fusion, where Roman practicality met Greek intellectualism. Wealthy Romans collected Greek statues, hired Greek tutors for their children, and emulated Greek literary forms. The Roman gods often found their Greek counterparts, their myths interwoven. This Hellenization of Roman culture, though sometimes viewed with suspicion by traditionalists, enriched Roman society immensely. By the mid-2nd century BCE, Rome was no longer merely a regional power. It was a burgeoning empire, stretching from Hispania, modern-day Spain, in the west to Greece and parts of Asia Minor in the east. The Mediterranean Sea, once a contested space, became effectively a Roman lake, Mare Nostrum, our sea. This vast expansion brought immense wealth into Rome, but also immense challenges of administration and governance. The provincial system, where conquered territories were governed by Roman officials and subjected to taxation, was still developing. These provinces often became sources of exploitation and corruption, contributing to growing tensions within the Republic. As we consider this period, imagine the vast cargo ships, Roman in design, traversing the Mediterranean, laden with grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, and precious goods from the East. Rome was becoming the hub of a vast commercial network, drawing resources and wealth from across its growing domain. The city of Rome itself was transforming, growing in size and grandeur, though not without its problems of overcrowding and sanitation. The social fabric of the Republic was stretching under the strain of conquest and wealth. The traditional values of simplicity and civic duty were being challenged by new luxuries and the pursuit of individual power. The Punic Wars and the subsequent expansion into the Hellenistic East were crucibles that forged Rome into an imperial power. They honed its military machine, tested its resilience, and shaped its geopolitical outlook. The vast resources acquired, however, also sowed the seeds of future instability. The gap between rich and poor widened. The traditional social order began to fray, and ambitious generals and politicians would soon emerge, ready to challenge the established norms of the Republic. As these images gently settle in your mind, consider the sheer determination of the Roman people, their willingness to endure immense hardship for the sake of their city. The echoes of Hannibal's elephants thunder across the plains of Italy, and the clang of Roman swords against Carthaginian shields reverberates through history. The Mediterranean, once a mosaic of independent city-states, is now unified under the eagle standard of Rome. This monumental shift in power laid the groundwork for the next dramatic chapter in Roman history, a period of internal turmoil and the ultimate transformation of the Republic. Allow your thoughts to drift, carried by the gentle tide of this historical narrative, as you continue your journey into peaceful slumber. With the Mediterranean firmly under its control, Rome stood at the pinnacle of its external power. Yet internally, the Republic began to groan under the weight of its own success. The 2nd and 1st centuries BCE witnessed a period of profound social, economic, and political upheaval, often referred to as the crisis of the Roman Republic. Imagine the grand edifice of Roman governance, once a model of stability, now showing cracks and fissures, strained by unprecedented wealth, growing inequality, and the ambitions of powerful individuals. The Punic Wars had left a lasting impact on Roman society, particularly on the small farmers who formed the backbone of the legions. Prolonged military service meant their farms often fell into disrepair or were bought up by wealthy senators and equites, knights, who amassed vast latifundia. These large estates, often worked by slaves acquired through conquest, were highly profitable and further marginalized the free peasantry. Displaced and impoverished, many migrated to Rome, swelling the ranks of the urban poor. This created a widening chasm between the incredibly rich and the increasingly destitute, undermining the traditional social fabric that had long emphasized civic virtue and land ownership. This growing social unrest found its voice in the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. Imagine two charismatic young tribunes, champions of the plebeians, who dared to challenge the established order. Tiberius Gracchus, elected tribune of the plebs in 133 BCE, proposed radical land reforms, aiming to redistribute public lands to the poor. His actions, though popular with the masses, deeply angered the conservative Senate, who saw them as an assault on property rights and senatorial authority. The political climate became dangerously polarized, and ultimately Tiberius was murdered by a mob of senators and their supporters, a shocking act that set a perilous precedent for political violence in Rome. A decade later, his younger brother, Gaius Gracchus, pursued even more ambitious reforms, including extending citizenship rights, subsidizing grain for the poor, and challenging senatorial control over provincial governance. Like his brother, Gaius met a violent end, demonstrating the extreme lengths to which the Roman elite would go to protect their power. The Gracchi brothers, though ultimately tragic figures, highlighted the deep-seated problems within the Republic and foreshadowed the bloody civil conflicts to come. Their deaths marked a turning point, showing that political disputes were increasingly being settled not through debate and consensus, but through violence and assassination. The military also underwent a significant transformation during this period. Traditionally, the Roman army was a citizen militia, requiring property ownership for service. However, as Rome expanded and campaigns grew longer, and as the number of landless citizens increased, this system became unsustainable. Gaius Marius, a brilliant general and an innovative politician, revolutionized the Roman army in the late 2nd century BCE. Imagine Marius recognizing the need for a professional fighting force, opening the legions to landless citizens, promising them pay, equipment, and a share of the spoils upon discharge. This Marian reform created a professional army, loyal not to the Republic, but to their general, who could ensure their retirement benefits, often in the form of land grants. This change had profound implications. Generals now commanded armies personally loyal to them, transforming the military into a powerful political tool. Ambitious individuals could use their legions to advance their own careers, challenging the authority of the Senate and paving the way for civil wars. The Republic, designed for a citizen army, was ill-equipped to handle generals with immense personal power and devoted professional soldiers. The 1st century BCE plunged Rome into a series of devastating civil wars. Figures like Sulla, Marius's rival, emerged, leading their armies against each other in bloody power struggles. Sulla, after a brutal period of proscriptions, lists of enemies to be executed, established himself as dictator, aiming to restore senatorial power, but his actions only further destabilized the Republic. Imagine the streets of Rome, once the center of vibrant public life, now stained with the blood of political rivals, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. Then came the triumvirates, informal alliances of powerful men who sought to dominate Roman politics. The first triumvirate, formed in 60 BCE, brought together 3 of the most ambitious and influential figures of the age: Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great, a renowned general; Marcus Licinius Crassus, Rome's wealthiest man; and Gaius Julius Caesar, a brilliant orator, politician, and military commander. Imagine these 3 titans, each with their own vast network of clients and legions, attempting to carve up influence and control the Republic. Their uneasy alliance was driven by mutual ambition and a desire to bypass the traditional mechanisms of the Senate. The story of Julius Caesar is one of remarkable ambition and strategic genius. His conquest of Gaul, chronicled in his own vivid commentaries, was a monumental military achievement that extended Roman dominion across vast new territories and solidified his personal power and popularity. Picture Caesar's legions, disciplined and loyal, fighting their way through dense forests and across mighty rivers, facing down fierce Gallic tribes. As his fame grew, so did the fears of his rivals in the Senate, particularly Pompey, who grew increasingly uneasy about Caesar's rising star. The inevitable clash came when Caesar, defying the Senate's orders to disband his legions, famously crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, uttering the words, "Alia iacta est," the die is cast. This act was a declaration of civil war against Pompey and the Senate. The ensuing conflict plunged the Roman world into chaos. Battles raged across Italy, Greece, and North Africa. Ultimately, Caesar emerged victorious, defeating Pompey and consolidating his power. Caesar's dictatorial rule, though initially popular with many, was deeply unsettling to those who cherished the Republican ideal. He introduced various reforms, including calendar reform, public works projects, and land distribution. But his accumulation of power and his perceived autocratic tendencies fueled resentment among a faction of senators who feared he would become a king. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Julius Caesar was assassinated in the Senate House. Imagine the dramatic scene. Senators, many of whom he considered friends, drawing daggers and striking him down, believing they were restoring the Republic. However, Caesar's assassination did not restore the Republic. It merely plunged Rome into another round of even bloodier civil wars. His adopted son and heir, Octavian, along with Mark Antony and Marcus Lepidus, formed the Second Triumvirate, ruthlessly hunting down Caesar's assassins and then turning on each other. The rivalry between Octavian and Mark Antony, exacerbated by Antony's alliance with Queen Cleopatra VII of Egypt, culminated in the decisive naval battle of Actium in 34 BCE. Imagine the vast fleets clashing in the Ionian Sea, a battle that would determine the fate of the Roman world. Octavian's victory was absolute, leaving him as the sole undisputed ruler of Rome. The long century of crisis, marked by civil strife, political assassinations, and the rise of powerful individuals, had utterly transformed the Roman state. The institutions of the Republic, designed for a city-state, proved incapable of governing a vast empire and controlling ambitious generals with loyal armies. The constant infighting and violence had exhausted the Roman people, who increasingly yearned for peace and stability, even if it meant sacrificing some of their traditional freedoms. As these tumultuous events echo in your mind, consider the profound shift from a system of shared power and civic virtue to one dominated by individual ambition and military might. The Roman citizen, once proud of his participation in the Republic, now lived in a world where strongmen dictated policy and civil wars were a constant threat. The very definition of Roman governance was being reshaped, not by constitutional debate, but by the sword. We are at the threshold of a new era, one that will see the Republic fade and a new form of government, the Empire, rise from its ashes. Allow yourself to absorb these complex shifts as you drift further into the historical tapestry of Rome. From the ashes of civil war, a new era dawned, ushered in by Octavian, who, with masterful political acumen, carefully dismantled the vestiges of the Republic while seemingly preserving its forms. In 27 BCE, he accepted the title of Augustus, meaning revered one, marking the official beginning of the Roman Empire and the start of a remarkable period known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. Imagine a vast realm stretching from the chilly climes of Britannia to the sun-drenched sands of Egypt, now unified under a single, powerful ruler and experiencing 2 centuries of unprecedented stability and prosperity. Augustus, a shrewd and pragmatic leader, understood the deep Roman aversion to kingship. He carefully crafted his image as the princeps, the first citizen, rather than a monarch. He maintained the Senate, the consuls, and other republican institutions, but subtly concentrated all real power in his own hands. He became commander-in-chief of the army, the chief priest, Pontifex Maximus, and held tribunician power, allowing him to veto any law. This facade of republicanism, while obscuring an autocratic reality, provided a comforting continuity for a populace weary of war. Augustus transformed Rome from a city of brick into a city of marble, undertaking extensive building projects that not only beautified the capital, but also provided employment and a sense of renewal. Picture the gleaming white marble of the new Forum of Augustus, or the Grand Temple of Mars Ultor, standing as testaments to Rome's restored glory and its new leader's piety. The Pax Romana was characterized by a sustained period of internal peace, economic growth, and cultural flourishing. The vast Roman road network, already extensive, was further improved and expanded, facilitating the rapid movement of legions, merchants, and goods across the empire. Imagine the bustling trade routes, goods from distant lands flowing into Rome, silks from China, spices from India, grain from North Africa, and tin from Britain. This economic integration fostered immense wealth, though it was not always evenly distributed. Cities across the empire thrived, developing impressive infrastructure, including aqueducts, public baths, theaters, and amphitheaters. These public works were not just practical, they were symbols of Roman power and civilization, bringing amenities and entertainment to urban populations. The Roman legal system continued to evolve during this period, becoming more sophisticated and universal. Jurists, legal experts, played a crucial role in interpreting and developing the law, creating a comprehensive body of jurisprudence that sought to apply principles of justice and equity across the diverse populations of the empire. The concept of ius gentium, the law of nations, which applied to all peoples under Roman rule, whether citizens or not, became increasingly important. This provided a framework for governing a vast multi-ethnic empire and helped to create a sense of order and predictability. The early emperors, often referred to as the Julio-Claudian dynasty, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, laid the foundations of imperial administration. While some, like Caligula and Nero, were infamous for their excesses and tyranny, others, like Tiberius and Claudius, were capable administrators who strengthened the imperial bureaucracy. Claudius, in particular, was known for his scholarly pursuits and for expanding the empire by conquering Britannia in 43 CE. Imagine Roman legions landing on the shores of a mist-shrouded island, beginning the long process of Romanization in a new and challenging frontier. The Flavians, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian, succeeded the Julio-Claudians after a brief civil war in 69 CE, the year of 4 emperors. Vespasian, a pragmatic general, restored stability and initiated grand public works, most notably the Colosseum, or Flavian Amphitheater. Imagine the colossal structure rising in the heart of Rome, a testament to Roman engineering and a venue for spectacular gladiatorial contests and public spectacles. These games, though brutal by modern standards, served a vital social function, providing entertainment for the masses and reinforcing imperial power. The 2nd century CE saw the reigns of the 5 good emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. This was arguably the zenith of the Pax Romana. Trajan, a highly successful military commander, expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent, conquering Dacia, modern-day Romania, and parts of Parthia. Imagine the triumph of Trajan's column in Rome, its spiraling reliefs depicting the Dacian Wars, a vivid narrative of Roman military might and engineering prowess. Hadrian, known for his administrative reforms and his love of Greek culture, consolidated the empire's borders rather than expanding them, famously building Hadrian's Wall across northern Britain to defend against barbarian incursions. Picture this massive stone barrier stretching from coast to coast, a symbol of Roman imperial power and a formidable defense. Under these emperors, the Roman Empire was at its most secure and prosperous. Cities flourished, trade routes were safe, and a common Roman culture, albeit with regional variations, spread across the vast territories. Latin became the language of administration and law in the West, while Greek remained dominant in the East. A robust civil service managed the complexities of governing such a vast realm. Romanization, the process by which conquered peoples adopted Roman culture, language, and customs, was largely peaceful, driven by the perceived benefits of Roman citizenship, infrastructure, and law. Many provincial elites eagerly embraced Roman ways, rising through the ranks of the military and administration, and contributing to the empire's strength. Daily life across the empire varied greatly, but for many, particularly in the cities, it was a time of relative peace and comfort. Public baths served as social hubs, places for bathing, exercise, and intellectual discussion. Markets bustled with activity, offering a dizzying array of goods. Roman villas, particularly in the countryside, were often luxurious, adorned with mosaics and frescoes, reflecting the wealth of the landowning elite. For the vast majority, life was centered around agriculture, the backbone of the economy. The rhythms of the seasons dictated their work, and their connection to the land was fundamental. However, even during this golden age, the seeds of future challenges were being sown. The vastness of the empire, while a source of strength, also presented formidable logistical and administrative challenges, maintaining the extensive network of roads, defending vast borders, and ensuring internal security required immense resources. The reliance on slave labor, while economically expedient, also created social tensions. Furthermore, the selection of emperors, often through adoption during the good emperors period, eventually reverted to hereditary succession, leading to less capable rulers and greater instability. The very success of the Pax Romana also led to a certain complacency. and the empire, for all its might, remained vulnerable to external pressures and internal weaknesses. As we conclude this chapter, allow your mind to envision the vastness and grandeur of the Roman Empire at its peak. Imagine the majestic cities, the intricate network of roads, and the disciplined legions guarding its frontiers. Feel the sense of order and prosperity that defined the Pax Romana, a period of unparalleled peace and cultural exchange. This was a time when Roman civilization shone brightest, leaving an indelible mark on art, architecture, law, and governance that continues to inspire and influence us today. Let these images of imperial might and cultural sophistication gently lead you further into the tranquil embrace of historical reflection. As the 3rd century CE dawned, the golden age of the Pax Romana began to recede, giving way to a period of unprecedented turmoil and instability known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Imagine the grand Roman Empire, once a beacon of order, now reeling from a relentless barrage of external threats, internal strife, and economic collapse. This was a time when the very survival of Rome seemed uncertain, a period marked by constant warfare, rapid succession of emperors, and profound societal changes. The primary external pressure came from increased barbarian incursions along Rome's vast frontiers. To the north, Gothic tribes pressed against the Danube, while Franks and Alemanni ravaged the Rhine. To the east, the powerful new Sassanid Persian Empire, a resurgent rival, launched devastating attacks on Roman provinces in the Near East. Imagine the constant fear and uncertainty that permeated the borderlands as legions struggled to hold back waves of invaders, often outmanned and outmaneuvered. These wars were incredibly costly, draining the imperial treasury and forcing emperors to repeatedly debase the currency to pay their troops, leading to rampant inflation. Internally, the political landscape became a dizzying merry-go-round of emperors. Over a 50-year period, from 235 to 284 CE, there were more than 24 legitimate emperors and countless usurpers. Most met violent ends, assassinated by their own soldiers or rival generals. This era is often called the Barracks Emperors period, as emperors were frequently proclaimed by their legions and held power only as long as they retained military support. Imagine the chaos this created. Provinces unsure who their legitimate ruler was, loyalty shifting with the winds of military success, and public trust eroding with each violent overthrow. The Senate, once a powerful body, became largely irrelevant, stripped of its authority as power resided solely with the army. The economic consequences of this instability were severe. Constant warfare disrupted trade routes, cities were sacked, and agricultural production declined. Inflation soared as emperors minted coins with less and less precious metal, making money virtually worthless. People resorted to bartering, and the intricate economic network that had flourished under the Pax Romana began to unravel. Imagine merchants struggling to conduct business, prices fluctuating wildly, and a general sense of decline permeating daily life. Many urban centers, once vibrant hubs of commerce and culture, began to shrink as people fled to the countryside seeking security and self-sufficiency. This period also saw an increase in banditry and a general breakdown of law and order in many regions. The social fabric of the empire also strained under these pressures. The middle class, once prosperous, found itself increasingly impoverished. Fear and superstition grew, and traditional Roman religious practices, while still observed, faced challenges from new mystery cults and, increasingly, from the growing influence of Christianity, which offered a sense of community and hope in uncertain times. The reliance on the military became paramount, and society became increasingly militarized, with fewer resources dedicated to education, arts, or public works that did not directly serve defense. Despite the seemingly insurmountable challenges, Rome eventually found leaders capable of stemming the tide of chaos. The most significant of these, soldier emperors, was Diocletian, who ascended to the throne in 284 CE. Imagine a stern and pragmatic military man, keenly aware of the empire's vastness and its administrative burdens. Diocletian understood that the empire was simply too large and too complex for one man to govern effectively, especially given the constant threats on multiple frontiers. To address this, Diocletian implemented radical reforms, fundamentally restructuring the Roman state. His most famous innovation was the tetrarchy, or rule of four. He divided the empire into two halves, east and west, each governed by an Augustus, senior emperor, and assisted by a Caesar, junior emperor and designated successor. Imagine the symbolic weight of this division. Two co-equal Augusti, each with a Caesar, sharing the immense burden of imperial rule. This system aimed to provide more immediate responses to threats on the borders and to ensure a smoother succession, avoiding the violent power struggles of the previous decades. Diocletian also introduced sweeping administrative and economic reforms. He increased the number of provinces, making them smaller and more manageable, and separated civil and military authority within each. He attempted to stabilize the economy with price edicts and tax reforms, though these were often met with limited success. He also imposed stricter control over society, attempting to bind people to their professions and places of birth to ensure stability and tax collection. While effective in bringing some order back to the empire, these reforms also centralized power, increased bureaucracy, and reduced individual freedoms. The division of the empire under the Tetrarchy was not intended to be permanent, but it marked a crucial step towards the eventual East-West split. The Eastern Roman Empire, with its wealthier cities, more robust economy, and less exposed frontiers, began to develop a distinct character. Its capital often moved from Nicomedia to other imperial cities, highlighting its growing importance. After Diocletian's abdication in 305 CE, a rare voluntary retirement for a Roman emperor, the Tetrarchy system, despite its initial success, quickly broke down into renewed civil wars. This paved the way for another transformative figure, Constantine the Great. Imagine Constantine, a powerful general who, after a series of decisive victories, most famously at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, emerged as the sole ruler of the Roman world. It was during this period that Christianity, once a persecuted minority religion, began its ascent to imperial favor. Constantine's reign marked a profound turning point. In 313 CE, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious toleration throughout the empire, effectively ending the systematic persecution of Christians. This was a monumental shift, acknowledging the growing influence of the Christian faith. Then, in 330 CE, Constantine made an even more symbolic move. He founded a new capital city on the site of ancient Byzantium, naming it Nova Roma, New Rome, though it quickly became known as Constantinople. Imagine the sheer ambition of building a magnificent new capital, strategically located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia on the Bosporus. This act further solidified the distinct identity and growing importance of the Eastern Empire. The crisis of the 3rd century had severely tested Rome, but it had also led to fundamental transformations. The empire that emerged from this period was different. It was more centralized, more militarized, and increasingly divided along east-west lines. The old republican ideals were long gone, replaced by a more autocratic imperial system. The economic and social problems persisted, but a fragile stability had been restored, albeit at a significant cost. The stage was now set for the final chapters of the Western Roman Empire. As these complex shifts resonate within your mind, consider the incredible resilience of the Roman state, capable of enduring such prolonged and profound crises. The roar of battle, the anxious whispers of a populace facing invasion, the shifting loyalties of generals, all contributed to the forging of a new, albeit altered, Roman identity. The empire, though scarred, had survived, but its future would continue to be defined by the challenges of its vastness and the ever-present pressures on its borders. Allow your thoughts to gently drift with these profound historical movements as you continue your journey into a peaceful sleep. As the 4th century CE progressed, the Roman Empire, though outwardly stabilized by the reforms of Diocletian and Constantine, continued to face immense pressures. The division between East and West deepened, both culturally and politically, as their destinies diverged. Imagine the Western Empire, with its capital shifting from Rome to Ravenna or Milan for better defense, facing increasing difficulties, while the Eastern Empire, centered on the magnificent city of Constantinople, enjoyed greater stability and prosperity. The primary external threat continued to be the relentless barbarian migrations. These were not simply isolated raids, but vast movements of entire peoples. Goths, Vandals, Huns, Franks, and others, often fleeing pressures from further east, who sought new lands within the Roman frontiers. The Battle of Adrianople in 378 CE was a particularly devastating blow, where the Visigoths annihilated a large Roman army and killed Emperor Valens. Imagine the shockwaves that reverberated through the empire as news of this catastrophic defeat spread. It was a clear signal that the seemingly invincible Roman legions were no longer supreme. The reasons for the Western Roman Empire's decline and eventual fall are complex and multifaceted, a subject of ongoing historical debate. It wasn't a single event, but a gradual process spanning several centuries. Economic problems persisted. Heavy taxation to fund the military crippled the economy, trade declined in many regions, and the infrastructure began to deteriorate. The West also suffered from a declining population, weakened by disease and constant warfare, which reduced the available tax base and manpower for the legions. Politically, the Western Empire struggled with weak and often short-lived emperors, many of whom were controlled by powerful barbarian generals within their own armies. The court was often rife with intrigue and corruption. The constant need for defense meant an ever-increasing portion of the budget was diverted to the military, often at the expense of other vital services. The very loyalty of the army became questionable as more and more barbarian mercenaries were recruited to fill the ranks, sometimes even fighting against Rome's interests. Socially, the traditional Roman civic spirit waned. Many citizens felt increasingly alienated from a distant and often oppressive imperial government. The vast social inequalities persisted, and the once vibrant urban centers experienced decline as wealth and power became concentrated in the hands of a few large landowners who created self-sufficient estates, known as villas, often defended by their own private armies. This led to a decentralization of power and a weakening of central authority. Culturally, the influence of Christianity grew dramatically. After Constantine's conversion and the Edict of Milan, Christianity became increasingly integrated into the fabric of the empire. By the end of the 4th century, under Emperor Theodosius I, it became the official state religion. Imagine the dramatic shift from persecution to imperial patronage as churches rose and Christian dogma shaped imperial policy. While Christianity offered spiritual solace and a new moral framework, some historians argue that it also redirected focus away from earthly matters of state and military duty, though this remains a point of scholarly discussion. The 5th century saw a dramatic acceleration of the West's decline. In 410 CE, the Visigoths, under Alaric, sacked the city of Rome itself. Imagine the shock and horror across the Roman world as the Eternal City, inviolate for nearly 800 years, was plundered. Though not the end of the empire, this event was a profound psychological blow, shattering the illusion of Roman invincibility. Wave after wave of barbarian groups carved out kingdoms within the Roman West. The Vandals established a kingdom in North Africa, disrupting vital grain supplies. The Visigoths settled in Hispania and Gaul, and the Franks and Burgundians established their presence in Gaul. The imperial court in the West became a shadow of its former self, often powerless to prevent these incursions. Figurehead emperors reigned briefly, often at the mercy of powerful barbarian generals like Ricimer. The true power lay with these barbarian warlords who increasingly held positions of authority within the Roman military and government. The traditional date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire is 476 CE. In that year, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, a young boy, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, who simply sent the imperial regalia back to Constantinople, signaling that he would rule Italy in the name of the Eastern Emperor. Imagine this quiet, almost understated end to an era. No grand battle, no cataclysmic event, but rather a final acknowledgement that the Western imperial line had ceased to be viable. While the Western Roman Empire ceased to exist as a unified political entity, its legacy profoundly shaped the development of medieval Europe. The Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to flourish for another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian culture. Its capital, Constantinople, remained a center of learning, art, and trade. The legacy of Rome in the West, though fragmented, was immense. Latin, the language of Rome, evolved into the Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian, and heavily influenced English. Roman law provided the foundation for legal systems across Europe and beyond. Roman engineering and architecture, from roads and bridges to domes and arches, inspired builders for centuries. The concept of empire, of a vast unified political entity, remained a powerful ideal. The Catholic Church, headquartered in Rome, inherited much of the Roman administrative structure and continued to provide a sense of unity and authority in the fragmented post-Roman world. As we conclude our journey through the vast tapestry of Roman history, consider the enduring echoes of this civilization. The lessons of its rise, its triumphs, its struggles, and its eventual transformation continue to inform and inspire us. From the humble beginnings on the Tiber to the sprawling majesty of its empire, Rome's story is one of ambition, innovation, resilience, and ultimately change. Its laws, its language, its art, and its ideals have woven themselves irrevocably into the fabric of Western civilization. Allow these final reflections to gently guide you into a state of deep tranquility. The distant clang of a Roman legionary's armor, the murmur of Latin in the Forum, the wisdom of ancient philosophers. These are the gentle whispers of history that now accompany you into restful slumber. The great story of the Roman Empire has unfolded, leaving behind a rich legacy that continues to resonate in our world today. May your sleep be peaceful and filled with the profound wisdom of the past.